Hello there folks, I'm Marshall, and given the recent release of the Legion faction in Planetary Annihilation, you've asked for an overview video, so let's get right to it. A point to add though is that at the time of recording this video, Legion is still in beta, so things may be tweaked, but I will not be going into finer balance details regardless. Before we begin, in order to get Legion, you must download the Legion mod through the Community Mods tab in-game. At the time of recording this video, you will still need to go into the PTE by opting into the beta public test environment through Steam. However, once updates are pushed to live, you will not need to opt into the PTE. I will make a video detailing those updates at that time. So what exactly is Legion? Legion is a mod created by the community over many months which adds an entirely new faction to the game to be played alongside vanilla, known as the MLA, or Machine Liberation Army, in Legion's lore. It is not a reskin and is free, however you will need to run Titans in order to run the mod. To play as Legion, when you host or join a lobby with the Legion mod enabled, you will need to select one of the commanders highlighted in red. Their names are Overwatch, Rockteeth, Cyclops and Wasushi. More may be added over time. The overall playstyle of the Legion faction is somewhat different to that of vanilla. In comparison, while vanilla will focus more on rapid expansion, aggression and strength in overwhelming numbers, a Legion player focuses on army composition and will have to be much more conservative in the early game when against a player using MLA. Legion units, while generally stronger, are somewhat more expensive and less mobile. Early game, therefore, a Legion player will need to focus on strategic defense with a focus on unit composition and taking the best possible engagements. When the mid-game arrives, however, the Legion will have enough units to have a strong push forcing the MLA player on the defensive, while over time the strengths and weaknesses of each faction should balance out. This does mean that on larger planets, MLA will have an advantage in the early game, while smaller planets will work more in favour of Legion players due to their high strength and restriction forced upon the MLA player. Of course, Legion vs Legion games will play differently again, but still with a focus on unit composition. Keep these factors in mind when I go through the units, as different circumstances will call for different approaches. Now, let's get to the units. Starting with bots or walkers, we have the Peacekeeper. Capable of taking more hits than docs at a price of slower speed and DPS, these should supplement most bot forces to soak a bit of damage. They are not great at dealing with tanks, however, and their fire rate means they are not a great unit for raiding. Next is the Lancer. More suited to raiding with a high rate of fire, they are ideal for dealing with docs, as well as some Legion armour. They can't take as many hits, however, so mix them with Peacekeepers for more longevity. Kill them off with Sparks and Ants. The Purger is the Legion's development on the Boombot. Capable of leaping up and down terrain, they are more suited to combating Peacekeepers and Lancers rather than taking on tank forces like their MLA counterparts. In Legion, the bots have the mobile anti-air with the Patriot. It's good at dealing with bumblebees and Legion air threats like bombers and gunships. Importantly, the mobility of the Patriot means that Legion can raid without needing to have a significant air presence, unlike MLA. Legion's early ground scout, the Investigator, can also be found within bots. It has a large vision range and is able to detect mines. This unit can also leap up cliffs and deploy as a stealth radar, detectable by combat fabricators, skitters, investigators, and infiltrators. Legion's T1 vehicles, also known as armour, are generally more powerful than their MLA counterparts, but are also more specialised. The Shank can take a beating while dishing it out. It's great at sorting out ants and other basic Legion tanks. It is, however, less mobile and more expensive, and will suffer at the hands of superior numbers of lighter units with good rate of fire, such as Docs and Lancers. The Stoke is an amphibious, faster-moving tank for the Legion that offers an area of effect, damage, and torpedo capabilities. Use these to deal with bot threats to your tank forces. Their rate of fire and speed also makes them more suited to raiding enemy metal extractors, though bots still have the speed advantage. Another way to supplement your tank force is with the Maul. It can take a lot of damage like the Inferno, but it has a shotgun-like weapon ideal for using against large bot forces, while pushing your front lines forward. Its limited range and slow movement speed mean that tanks are the ideal way to deal with these. Given their characteristics, Mauls are ideal for mixing in with Shank forces in order to defend them. Legion also have a mobile artillery tank at T1, the Corsair. Use it to support your pushes from a distance, but keep it defended from bots and Stokes. It can also hover, so can traverse water and lava. This may be useful at attacking defended choke points from a different angle. Legion vehicles are supported by their own combat fabricator, the Guardian. It can place mines, teleporters, and is able to detect units and mines, and can repair your forces as they push. For their basic air force, the Legion has the Scythe, Dauntless, Marauder, Osprey, and Nova. The Scythe is a very fast anti-air fighter, but can only shoot forward, giving hummingbirds the advantage in some situations. The Dauntless is a fast, powerful precision bomber, great against tanks, defences, and naval units. The Marauder is a fast air scout that doubles as a light gunship, great at picking off fabricators, but is very lightly armoured. The Osprey is your air transport. Meanwhile, the Nova is an area of effect suicide air bomb of sorts. It is great at dealing with T2 high priority air units. You will need to support them so that they can do their damage before they are destroyed, however. For naval, Legion has the Catfish, a fast scout boat equipped with torpedoes and a surface weapon. These are ideal to support your main navy against submarine threats. It is lightly armoured though. The Talos is the Legion's anti-air ship. It has no other weapons, however, so be sure to use these to support your main navy. The T1 destroyer is the Bowhead. With great range and high armour, it's great for frontal assault. While the Orca from MLA required to be side-on to use all cannons in a broadside, the Bowhead has 3 front-mounted cannons. It has no torpedo capabilities, however, and is very slow. Be sure to use Catfish to support these ships of the line against subs. Finally, the Aquila is close-range, lightly armoured submarine. Its speed makes it great for hit-and-run assaults on naval vessels such as Leviathans, Bowheads, and Epochs. Its light armour means that you will need a good group in order to deal the damage required rapidly to conserve your units. Moving to T2 now, the Epoch is very durable, but slow, with a long-ranged area of effect weapon. They are quite expensive, but are great at dealing with navies and sieging from afar. They have no torpedo defences though, so subs are the ideal way to deal with these. The Hammerhead is a heavily armoured but fast close-ranged vessel with side-mounted cannons designed for firing on enemy formations from within, having rushed in, ramming the enemy. It can take a lot of hits too, so it's good at pushing against torpedo positions and longer-ranged attackers. The Manta has a long-ranged area of effect anti-air weaponry, great at dealing with swarms of air units and supporting your T2 navy. Again, no torpedo defences, so support is needed. The Jaeger is the Legion's hover vessel with long-range weaponry, great at dealing with heavy ground threats such as slammers, levelers, and T2 Legion units. They are very fast and manoeuvrable, so be sure to keep them out of range of enemy fire. You will need to support them with air, however. Finally, there is the Remora, a repair submarine that can build and detect mines, as well as building torpedo launchers. Legion's T2 bots include the damage-dealing Enforcer. Its rapid-fire guns are great at dealing with larger groups of bots. It is, however, weak to heavier tank fire. It would be an idea to combine these with the Monstrosity. A fortress on legs with a long-range cannon, it is slow and can soak a lot of damage, but equally it is strong against heavier damage dealers and pushing your offensives. Its low rate of fire means that large numbers of weaker units should be used to deal with these. The Necromancer is another unit capable of sieging an enemy. It's amphibious, can build purges on the go, and pushes into enemy forces, exploding, dealing high area damage when destroyed. It isn't great at dealing with units that can do large damage quickly, however, such as Slammers and Enforcers, as it will not get close enough to the enemy to deal its damage. The Miniman is another siege bot that fires long-range, time-delayed bombs that deal area damage. It is slow and fragile though, and is particularly suited to dealing with static defences. T2 bots also have the Orb Weaver, an advanced area of effect anti-air weapon great at dealing with swarms of air units. Finally, there is the Support Commander Praetorian, great at creating forward bases, and when in larger numbers can push with a lot of power. Legion's T2 vehicles have the Scorpion, designed for heavy assault with high damage and some area of effect. It is great at dealing with large numbers of lower tier units. When engaging levelers, be sure to use the greater range of the Scorpion. Next up is the Earthshaker. It can take a lot of damage but has limited range. It deals great area damage to those unfortunate to get close enough, and as such is great at pushing defended positions and siege units. It will not fare too well against ranged units with high damage that can kite, however. The Havoc is a great anti-armor unit that deals great damage in chained lightning. It doesn't have the highest durability though, so be careful of long-range damage dealers such as the Deathmark. This is a sniper tank in the Legion's T2 arsenal. It has huge range but is slow and lightly armoured. Keep it away from your front lines and make sure it's supported. This unit will be good at dealing with challenges from afar before the mainstay of your army gets into harm's way. Lastly, there is the Panzer. This hover tank has good range, but is lightly armoured and has weapons capable of hitting not only ground targets but also air and orbital threats. Again, it is worth reiterating that Legion players should always be careful when building their army. Weaknesses must be covered by other units, so a combination of units will be your best bet. Moving on to T2 Air now. Starting with the Firebird Air Superiority Fighter, it is ideal at dealing with swarms of fighters with its long-range cannons. This also makes it good at dealing with high-priority air targets such as Titans. It will be vulnerable if enemy aircraft get in range, however, so be sure to pair it with scouts so that you can keep it out of danger while still dealing its damage. Speaking of scouts, the Infiltrator, mentioned earlier in this video, is an advanced recon flyer with great vision. It can also detect mines and investigators and can deploy sensors for pockets of vision. Next up, the Lockheed Advanced Gunship. It is heavily armoured with good speed and damage and will provide great support when dealing with advanced ground armies. Be sure to support it with fighters though, as enemy aircraft will want these gone. The Meteor is the same in this regard. A flying drone carrier, the Meteor is quite slow but has a long range with its drones. These will be ideal at pushing defences from afar. When in larger groups, Meteors can deal out huge damage very quickly, but they can take a lot of metal to run. Be sure to escort and defend them. Finally, there is the Salamander. Heavily armoured and designed to deal area damage with its napalm, it is suited to destroying swarms of lightly armoured units. It can also deploy flame turrets, which can be used in a variety of ways, such as defending and attacking expansions and front lines. The Comet is another advanced air vessel, but not built from a factory, but is instead constructed by advanced fabricators. Its main feature is the built-in teleport that can move an army to any location and then move on to another location to add pressure elsewhere. The teleporter can be active while moving. Importantly, the Comet can travel between planets. Despite some defensive weapons, you will need to support it with fighters, otherwise it will be focused down once sighted given the threat it poses. Onto Orbital now. From the Orbital launcher, you can build the Viper, akin to the Avenger. The Orbital Scout and Radar is the Sputnik. It's vulnerable to orbital fighters, but it can detect investigators. The Chariot is the Legion's Astraeus, a fast single-unit interplanetary transport. The Wraith is the Legion's equivalent of the Hermes, a fast but fragile scout. It can travel very rapidly between planets. From the Orbital Factory, you will be able to build the Black Knight. Lightly armoured, quite slow and energy intensive, but able to deal huge area damage from above, the Black Knight is immensely powerful against planet-side units without orbital defence. The Cosmos is an expensive, heavily armoured but slow orbital radar. Unlike other orbital radar, it is equipped with a weapon capable of targeting units on the ground rather than those in orbit. You will still need to support it if you want it to survive when going to a planet with heavy orbital defences. The Excalibur is akin to the Artemis, with its long-range anti-orbital weaponry and light armour, ideal at attacking anchors and stalwarts, the Legion's static orbital turret, from a distance without taking losses. It is weak to fighter assaults, so be sure to support it. Finally, there is the Imperator, the Omega's cousin but with greater weapon range. This orbital battleship is good at breaking an orbital bastion, as it can take out ground and orbital static anti-orbital defense, thus paving the way for an orbital incursion. They are vulnerable to the long-range orbital weapons of the Artemis and Excalibur, however, due to their slow speed. Before we get to the Titans, let's have a look at the important economic differences and notable buildings that the Legion faction possesses. With the economy, a Legion T1 metal extractor is more expensive but gives an additional 1 metal compared to MLA extractors. However, their T2 extractor gives 1 less. So while early game they have a metal income advantage, fully developed extractors give identical yield. The cost of Legion units balances out the initial boost in metal, however. Note that in team games, MLA and Legion extractors are not compatible. Legion T1 power is not different to the MLA, but more will be required to support the military given the expensive and energy intensity. In this regard, the T2 generator gives 6,000 energy compared to the MLA's 3,750. They are very volatile though and will deal damage to the surrounding area on destruction. Place them in a way that they will not chain react. Such dangers are also present with the Legion economy storage buildings. This is because they offer much greater storage and combine both forms of storage into a single structure. Other structures of note include hives. These spawn nanobots that have a long range, with the idea of thinning out armies before they reach your main defensive line. They can also be used offensively in order to contain an enemy. Important T2 structures include the Arsonist. This is a static defense that roasts units that get too close. Amazing against lighter armoured units, it can instantly decimate any army reliant on docks, boombots or lancers for example. It can take a bit longer to charm more armoured vehicles and tanks however. The mines, called spoilers, do not detonate on touch, but instead raise up and deal damage over time in an area, and then explode, dealing area damage. By default, they are built in lines 3 mines wide by combat fabricators. The Legion also has access to the shield generator, the Rampart. Very costly in terms of energy consumption. The shield will lose integrity with each hit it takes. This means that it will completely defend against slow-firing artillery. To break through, you'll need to use units with a high rate of fire such as docks or enforcers for example. Yet there are some units with enough firepower to bypass the shield though, such as the Deathmark and longer-ranged units like sniper bots. Stacking multiple shields will only consume more of your power without providing any greater defense. The unit cannon available to Legion, the Star Cannon, is unlike its MLA counterpart in that not only is it built in orbit rather than on land, but it also has a limited range and only on the planet it is constructed on. It cannot fire units between planets. Last but by no means least, we come to the Titans. Legion's Assault Walker is the Thor. Amphibious, heavily armoured and capable of dealing massive damage, the Thor can take on the majority of ground forces to really add some weight to a ground offensive, but will need to get a little closer to its targets. You'll need to utilise radar and scouts to fully use the Thor's range. Next up is the Odin. As with the Thor, this is very durable, capable of dealing massive damage at a great distance. Unlike the Thor, the Odin hovers and has anti-aircraft weapons, which are very strong against incoming bombers and gunships. Again, you will need vision or radar to make use of its range. But MLA's Ares Titan has even greater range. Be mindful of range disparities. The Air Titan is the Loki. A gunship with anti-air capabilities, the Loki is very durable and strong against armies and defensive positions. You will need to support it, as enemy air forces will want to focus it down rapidly. The Orbital Titan is the Tyr. This battle station sports a focused laser powerful enough to decimate anything caught on the beam. It penetrates shields, but is very slow moving and unable to distinguish friend from foe. Be mindful of your army's position. Also, don't forget to defend it from other orbital units. Finally, there is the Holocene. Following in the wake of the Ragnarok, the Holocene needs no introduction. Construct this, defend it for 60 seconds, and then... Well, that's all for this video, folks. I hope you have found it useful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Either myself or fellow PA players or Legion team members will be sure to answer them to the best of our abilities. I will of course be making more Planetary Annihilation videos going forward, which will also feature more Legion action. I will also cover the PTE updates when those are released in the coming weeks, so please consider subscribing. If you haven't seen my recent guide to picture-in-picture, I recommend that you check that out as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.